What's up? What's up? What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Vanguard. Zach and I were just live about an hour ago, and now we're back for a big one, a big debate, conversation, discussion, whatever you want to call it, friendly disagreement. Hopefully, we'll see. But either way, yeah, we're excited to engage with and debate Vaush himself, someone we've talked about a lot here at the Vanguard. Covered our opinion on that guy's opinions quite a lot. So I guess it's only, been a matter of time until we actually met him face to face and hashed out the beef, so to speak. So looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun time. Obviously, Vaush is a huge channel, so it's cool of him to even let us come on and debate with them. That's not something that everybody does. That's a monster show, so that's something that's unique to him, and appreciate the opportunity to come and push back a little bit and disagree with some of his positions.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vaush is live on his show right now. I think we'll be getting started here any minute now. So make sure to stick around for the next hour or so. Again, this debate will be starting pretty much any minute. Basically, whenever he shows up in our stream room, we'll let him in and it's off to the races. But yeah, appreciate everyone that's tuned in so far. Hoping some more comrades trickle into the stream to watch this go down. Again, this is something I've been looking forward to for a long, long time. Excited to see it finally come to fruition. As Zach and I were mentioning in our stream earlier, we definitely don't have a ton of experience debating. We debated Glenn Greenwald once, and then we did an official sanctioned debate on modern day debates one time with some right wingers. So we're hoping that this goes well. Obviously, he has a lot more experience than us as far as debating, but I'm pretty confident in our abilities, Zach. And I think when it comes to the substance of the conversation, we're 100% on point. So I'm not really afraid. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a big deal.
Yeah, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, don't go soft on him." Like Gavin and I have our strategy, which is just to go in, to have a conversation, to express our disagreements, and try and iron out where those are, and potentially, hopefully, change the guy's mind. I don't have any interest in coming in here and just like setting the whole fucking place on fire, and just being a dick on purpose. So if that's what you're looking for, I'm sorry, but I'm going to break the news to you now that we're going to try and be like, thoughtful, rational, fucking, debate partners, and not necessarily like crybabies. That's not necessarily the impression I want to leave on a new audience of people who I'm trying to, connect with.
Yeah, that's important to mention too, is the fact that, a lot of the people that are going to be watching from Vaush's side probably either haven't ever seen any Vanguard content, or they have some caricature of us in their minds as some crazy wackos. So yeah, it's important that we come off well to that audience too, because regardless of the blood sports element of all of this, what's really important is the actual issues that we're going to be debating. And not only do I hope to change Vaush's mind, I hope to change his audience's mind, because obviously, they're probably for the most part in agreement with Vaush before this all starts. I'm hoping that by the end of the debate that has changed. So again, really excited to get going. Shout out to you, Bookworm Skates, for the $4.99. Screw the free market of ideas. I want the octagon of ideas. LOL. That's pretty funny. Thanks so much for the super chat.
Yeah, that is funny, and unfortunately not what you're in for tonight, but appreciate the $4.99 anyway, Bookworm.
Hey, we'll see, man. We'll never know how things turn out. Never know how things turn out. It might be an absolute brawl for all we know. But anyway, thank you so much, Bookworm Skates. Really appreciate the super chat donation. Thank you also, BW in Wisconsin, for the $10. Like a good boomer, I moved the lawn between shows, or I mowed the lawn between shows. Thanks for the 2-time stream today. Well, thank you, BW. Don't thank us. Thank you so much for tuning in, for being a part of this community, and obviously for the super chat donations. That's really, really massively appreciated. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and Gavin and I are going to be streaming a lot more coming up. So you guys are going to have lots of Vanguard content coming at you live on YouTube as we gear up for the end of the year.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're super, super excited. And again, thank you so much for the super chat donations. And everyone, sit tight. Should be coming up any minute now. Just again, waiting for Vaush to show up. Hopefully he doesn't chicken out. We'll see. I don't think so, though. He seemed pretty eager to debate us, at least as eager as we are to debate him. So super excited. Yeah, don't go anywhere, guys. This is about to go down. But yeah, really appreciate you all trickling in. Make sure to hit the like button, guys. If you haven't already, make sure to hit the like button on this stream. That way more people see it. That way it's promoted in the algorithm. Obviously, Vaush is a channel that is infinitely larger than ours. Like, we're talking times 100 at least, like way, way, way bigger channel than us. So we do appreciate it if you guys support us and hit that like button. So, he doesn't get all the views. We get a little bit of that action too. Really would appreciate it. Because yeah, he is streaming it on his channel as well. So it'll be simulcasted. But I'm glad you guys are here watching on our channel. This is where you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And now it's just a matter of sitting and waiting, and here we go. Right. The time has come. Like I said, I think it'll be a good conversation. But the elephant in the room is that this dude is an extremely, extremely adept debater. He knows what the fuck he's doing. He built his audience, for a reason. So yeah, it'll be a good discussion, but Gavin and I have brought our A game, and I'm glad that this is the conversation that we're having with Vaush, because I think that there is going to be a lot of agreement here that we'll find in the conversation while we're having it. And it'll be mostly disagreeing on the margins. And hopefully that's when, we can change some people's opinions.
Yeah, again, that's the goal here, to have a substantive conversation, hopefully change not only his mind, but the mind of his audience as well. So again, we're hoping he shows up now. The debate was supposed to start 1 minute ago, so let's hope he shows up pretty soon here. But yeah, anything, I guess, on your mind, Zach, while we wait?
Oh, not much. Excited to, get this show on the road. Like I said, I don't know. I'm trying not to have really any expectations going into this. You know what I mean? I really don't. It's obviously we've watched a lot of Vaush. So it's funny. We were actually talking about that whole experience with Mac, Good Politic Guy, earlier, and how, Mac is basically one of the people that we see as like a peer of ours, somebody that like came up in the same time frame, same age group, and similar idea for what they want to do from a career standpoint on YouTube. And he was talking about how it's so surreal watching these individuals who you've watched all day live stream, but you actually get to respond back to them. Feels like you're just watching a live stream that's got like a built-in AI that like responds back to you. So it will be a little weird having this like, surreal moment in front of like whatever his 6,000 live fucking audience is, astronomical numbers. So yeah.
And with that said, it does look like the Vaushmeister is here. So we're off to the races, guys. Here we go. Let's go. Wish us good luck. Time to meet Vaush. What's up, man?
Howdy.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing great. How are y'all doing?
Doing pretty good, man.
Yeah,
Thanks
doing
for
all right.
taking the time to chat with us.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. Well, I think didn't I say I wanted to talk to you guys a while back? I was playing Banjo-Kazooie and somebody linked me a video.
Yeah, no, I
saw
you
you were
remember
live.
that, Vaush.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Actually, I remember at the time we were down to discuss, but we had a guest that was like all queued up, ready to go, and it was kind of an important conversation. Not just the typical drama mongering that we typically do. So we wanted to get to that, but we're glad to finally engage with you. Obviously, we were telling the audience that we've made a lot of content reviewing your various takes, and we have given you credit in the past where we agree, but obviously there's been a lot of times too where we disagree, and I think that foreign policy is clearly one of those points of disagreement between myself and Zach and you, Vaush. So I think this is a really good context to have this debate. I know you put out a video responding to Zach and I's reaction to your take on drones, and I think there was a little bit of confusion about that off the bat. So
the direct convos are always better. I know how things get it's not just about confusion either. It's about tone. People are always going to be more charitable when you're speaking directly to someone. No, I'm happy to be talking to you guys. I actually just came off the cusp of having a convo with somebody who was in favor of the sentiment of the Iraq War. So I'm actually all primed for the for the foreign policy talks.
Oh God, yeah. I hope that we're a little bit more reasonable than whoever that was. I don't know how you could possibly defend the
I'm
Iraq
sure you guys
war.
are pro Iraq War too. We're all reasonable people here.
Well, it's a good segue, Vaush, because the video that we've reacted to, that in turn you reacted to, of ours, had to do a little bit with the drone war, and just the war on terror in general in the post 9/11 era. And you got really hung up on your video about this whole thing. Are drones better than mines? And in your opinion, we seemingly misinterpreted your argument. You said that, no, I wasn't saying drones are good. Obviously not. I was just saying that drones are, clearly better than mines as a form of warfare. Mines, obviously kill far, far, far more civilians. So obviously, just off the bat, you're 100% right about that. And if we didn't specify that, no, that wasn't the argument we were trying to make. And sorry if it came off that way. We weren't trying to paint you in the incorrect light or an inaccurate light. So, just off the bat, wanted to get that clear. But I think the point that we were, trying to hammer you on a little bit more, or that we were at least trying to express our disagreement with, and I can play it if you want, just in case you want to deny that you said this or whatever. But what you said that I really took issue with was we have a solid justification for engaging in drone strikes in Afghanistan to this day. That was the real meat of the issue where I disagreed with you. I think that even when it comes to killing Al-Qaeda leader, someone that was responsible for 9/11, I still don't think that justifies our drone war policy. And in fact, I think it feeds into the exact, State Department imperialist logic that ends up justifying the drone war in the first place, which obviously kills indiscriminate hundreds of thousands of civilians, far more, by the way, that were killed in 9/11 in the first place. So generally, I just don't think that the extrajudicial assassinations via drone are acceptable under basically any circumstance. And that was the gist of my beef with your take.
Yeah, I guess so there are two sides to this. There's the drone side and the extrajudicial execution side. Drones are here to stay whether we like it or not because they're just the next step in warfare. They're going to be adopted eventually by every country that can afford them. Why would anyone ever risk committing a pilot, all the training and the cost of a plane, to make these hits or whatever. So drones are here to stay. It's their application that people are concerned with. And when it comes to the extrajudicial assassinations, I guess the main issue that I have is that these days terrorism is capable of being so international, and I don't really know what the best mechanism would be for retaliation against terrorist groups outside of stuff like this. It feels like drones make it about as good as can be, all things considered, right? You wouldn't want to do another invasion of Afghanistan every time a former Al-Qaeda leader popped up. That'd be kind of bad.
And I want to ask this, like, genuinely, I really want to know your opinion, because you mentioned on the live stream, or your reaction live stream yesterday to us, when we made this point about the extrajudicial assassination, you're like, what, are we just supposed to go arrest him? And I genuinely want to know, why do you not think that's a possibility? Like, if we have the ability to, wage the militaristic efforts that we do abroad, and we have the ability to occupy countries, do you really think it would be impossible for us to send a team of CIA agents or whatever the hell to go apprehend this guy, so we could give him a trial by jury, and we don't have to sacrifice the a very intrinsically American value of habeas corpus in the process, the logic of which has led to the atrocities at Guantanamo Bay and all of these other war crimes committed in the name of anti-terrorism?
Well, I think that in the context of warfare, which I think is kind of the attitude certainly we take with Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, whatever, I don't think that the habeas corpus attitude is necessarily maintained. Obviously we can't put on trial every soldier we encounter. We could send people to arrest, but I mean, wouldn't that be worse? I mean, if you wanted to send in SEAL Team 6 every time you wanted to bring in some former terrorist leader, first of all, people are going to die because they're all holed up in compounds. We send folks in with guns. More people will die that way without trial, guards, whatever, than you'd get with a drone strike. If you manage to get them alive, which is not a guarantee, by the way, especially with some of the more, suicide vest prone terrorist leaders. We don't know how gung-ho they are with their own livelihoods. And you would also have to commit troops to the ground, which is like, I don't know. I feel like internationally, people would think a lot less of the idea of like a Navy ship with SEALs coming out, and like the whole process of extraditing somebody, killing their guards, bringing them to the U.S. It's a really tough situation. I don't know if that'd be better. It might just be more old-fashioned, I guess.
Well, I think that, I'll just break in here. I hear a lot of what you're saying, right? Obviously, there's a net benefit for the United States and, our ambitions globally if we are able to, instead of sending our soldiers over somewhere to, as you mentioned, not only die, but to kill, the protectorates or the guards of any of these terrorist leaders that we're after. However, I think it just comes back down to what I would consider to be, sort of a matter of principle for how we're going to conduct ourselves internationally. And I think that if I'm not ready to concede that, we're just going to accept the death toll from, this international military industrial complex that makes a massive trove of money off of these civilian drone deaths. And I think that, of course, we have to, okay, if I can just finish with this one point really quickly. I just want to say that I think that obviously right now with the system that we have laid out, all of the arguments that you're saying, they make sense. But I think from my perspective and the perspective that Gavin and I are trying to unfold here as, people who view themselves as like staunchly anti-war in basically every circumstance that And that's not to say that I'm here to like fucking simp for Russia on your team. Obviously, we have like solidarity for Ukrainian people and grandmothers and all that kind of shit, right? We're not tankies. But I'm just saying that I think that if we're going to really reevaluate the United States global position on the militaristic stage and start leading by example, right? That we would have to unfortunately do things that are going to be basically terrible for us to continue to try and operate as we have 800 plus military bases around the world. I think we'd have to bring back a draft. I think we'd have to, engage in civilian combat where we have a civilian army, because then it forces the actual people on the ground here. And this is a Noam Chomsky argument, by the way. I know you're giving me the side eye. That if you force the civilians to be drafted, then they will no longer be okay with these senseless ambitions abroad, that we will no longer put our lives in favor of the money for Boeing, that we will no longer put our lives in favor of the money for Raytheon. And if we don't do that, then we are just saying that, okay, we're going to let business be run as usual. And as you said, Vaush, then the drone war will be here to stay. But I'm just wondering, do you have any thoughts on an effort to eradicate a drone war, to upend a military industrial complex, even if you think that it's politically untenable at the moment?
Yeah, there was a lot loaded in there. I'm a huge advocate for reducing our military expenditures and retracting our position as like world police officers. What I'm saying right now with regards to like the drone striking of terrorist leaders, I would apply to any country that can get away with it, So England doesn't have 800 military bases across the world, or India or whatever. But if there was the reason I think Afghanistan is special is because it's essentially a terrorist state. I mean, it basically is now with the Taliban in charge, meaning diplomacy isn't really on the table. It's just not a mechanism that's viable there. If it was possible to extradite people, if Afghanistan was cooperative to the point where we could be like, hey, we'll give you guys, I don't know, what do you want? Billions, just we'll give you something. Can you give us the Al Qaeda person? Great. I think that'd be lovely. It would be a great sign of trust. The Afghanistan situation as it stands right now is a lot more complicated. And it seems like there's a greater pretext for, just sort of a free-for-all Fortnite match over who gets to murk the Al Qaeda leaders first. When it comes to the drone war stuff, the drones are here to stay. They're just an advancement technologically in terms of the means of killing people at a distance. It's how we use them that really, really matters. I am happy that the U.S. military-industrial complex has made an effort to make drones and their strikes less likely to kill civilians with that ninja missile shit they're doing. I think that's a good step. Because ideally, you wouldn't want to kill any civilians. Many civilians are going to die as a product of any military action. The goal would be to reduce that as much as possible. And I guess it would be a trade-off. What level of civilian deaths are you willing to accept as a trade-off for any successful military action? We have to consider this with anything. World War II, the invasion of the Pacific. I mean, any military action entails with it a threat. Drones have a uniquely low likelihood of civilian deaths relative to other mechanisms. Obviously, ground war is going to harm a lot more civilians. If you're trying to kill like one guy on the ground, like a drone's a way more effective way of doing it.
Fair.
So all this stuff's really complicated. I don't have any like hard jingoistic answers for stuff like this, because part of it is like the inevitable material advancement of means of warfare, and part of it is like the cultural place that America operates on at the world stage. And there's an intersection there that's really, really tough.
Well, let's talk about the cultural place where America stands in the world right now, because you're saying that Afghanistan is a terrorist state. And while I might agree with you, I think from the perspective of the Afghani people, or, a lot of other Middle Eastern people in general, we would be a terrorist state. As I mentioned, our drone strikes and airstrikes have killed well over 50,000 people since 9/11, which killed 3,000 people. Again, that's civilian murders carried out by the United States. So according to your logic, and I brought this up in our video, you mostly laughed it off. But do you really want to live in the world where Al Qaeda is, okay to drone our leaders, drone George Bush, Barack Obama, Joe Biden? If the logic you're extending to their drone strikes applies, then, do you really want to live in a world where every country is just drone striking their adversary? I think that's not really an ideal geopolitical situation that anyone would want to operate in, especially not from like a pacifist perspective.
No, I get that. So when I say terrorist, I should be more clear. The United States is a sponsor of a great deal of state terrorism. I would never deny that. It's more a matter of what alternatives do you have. In Afghanistan, no option exists at the moment with the Taliban in charge outside of throwing a bomb and a match in. There's just not really a mechanism for diplomatic engagement. In
Right.
the US, of course, there is.
Their vehicle for diplomatic engagement was 9/11. That's the problem. The
Well,
same logic that you're applying to our drone strikes, they applied to the attack on America in 9/11. They were getting back at us for our terrorism and war crimes.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily fair to compare a terrorist attack against civilians to a targeted strike on an Al Qaeda official.
Does it really matter what the reason is if 50,000 plus civilians end up massacred? Does it really matter what the?
Well,
I mean, Vaush, one sec. When you talk about Russia and Ukraine, you always say, well, of course there's going to be a justification for everything. Of course, Putin is going to justify his invasion of Ukraine somehow. Obviously, no one does these militaristic actions without justification. Well, the only thing that separates our terrorism from Al Qaeda's is that you think they have a better justification. The same thing that you constantly rail against other, geopolitical superpowers for using as excuses for their crimes.
Well, the difference is the justification that Putin is using is a pretext for war. In this case, though, whether or not you should kill a person is actually heavily influenced by the legitimacy of any, crime you would try to pin to them, right? I don't think the people in, the towers necessarily did anything wrong, apart from being financiers and New Yorkers. The Al Qaeda man, he certainly earned our spite. It's really like a matter of what you can get away with, right? And what the best option is given the context of that situation. So this is the reason why I was massively against the attack on Soleimani in the Iraqi airport. Now I don't like Iran. They do state-sponsored terrorism. They got some of their folks to shoot missiles at our bases. Very cringe, not great. Soleimani, massive piece of shit. But doing so. Iran is a country you can negotiate with. In fact, it's a country we should be. The Obama steps towards the Iran peace deal.
Probably the best thing he ever did.
Oh no, yeah, like huge shit right there, right? Like I want Iran to be treated as like an honored diplomatic guest. Do I like the country? No. Do I like America? No. What am I, a hypocrite? Just murking one of their guys in an airport is insane, like fucking wild to me, because it feels like if you have issues with what Soleimani is doing, and don't get me wrong, he did a lot of bad stuff, there's another avenue. There's always another avenue you can go through. When it comes to Afghanistan and like former Al-Qaeda leaders, I'm a bit more laissez-faire because it feels like any of the alternate options we have in that context would involve potentially risking greater international trouble. No American leader would ever risk losing a like a member of a SEAL team,
right?
Trying to apprehend someone they could just annihilate from 8 miles away,
right?
And it might cause more death to just do that. So it seems like we're kind of trading deaths here.
I mean, I definitely get what you're saying.
Petty.
Like I get the theory behind drone warfare and why you're saying that it's better than the alternative. I definitely understand that. But again, I think by feeding into the post 9/11 war on terror logic of just throwing habeas corpus in the trash, I really do think you're feeding into the exact same talking points which led to the atrocities committed at Guantanamo Bay, committed against untold, hundreds of innocent people that were tortured or killed or, killed as collateral damage, again, under this guise anti-terrorist war on terror activity, which continues to this day.
Okay, wait, can I ask you? Yeah, because I'm curious, right? So international terrorism is easier now than ever before, right? The way we're all connected. If there were people in Afghanistan, some new fucking leader, whatever, he pops up, funds a terrorist attack, directly leads to 17 people dying in France or whatever, right? People are mad, something has to be done. But dude's somewhere in Afghanistan, he's in a fortress, Do you think, and I'm seriously asking, there's 3 options, right? You drone strike, easy. You attempt to arrest, potentially very bloody and destructive, but you do get to put them on trial, maybe if they live. Or third, you ignore it. Of those 3, do you side with the arrest?
Here, let me tell you, and I want to explain this a little bit because I think that the conversation we're having is very similar to the conversation surrounding the death penalty. Obviously, I understand why people would say this guy's a complete piece of shit. He deserves to be punished via the death penalty. He doesn't deserve life. I can sympathize with that argument. I can understand why people make that argument in the same way that you're making the argument that you are right now. However, because of the fact that there's even a less than 1% chance of the wrong person, an innocent person, dying as a result of the death penalty, I'm against it in principle. I feel the same way about the drone war and these drone targets, your hypothetical terrorist who just killed 17 people and will kill again. Yes, I understand the context in which people would say, yeah, drone the fucker. It's going to be way easier and less people will die as a result. I understand that, just like I understand the logic behind the death penalty, but the fact that there's a significant likelihood that civilian people, innocent people, are going to die, or even the wrong person altogether. Numerous times we've said, oh, we droned the guy, and then either we didn't or it was actually someone else. Later it turns out they're still alive. I don't trust the US in this instance. Just like I don't trust us to execute the right person. Therefore, in principle, I'm against the entire theory.
The difference, though, is that the death penalty is something enacted potentially on a person who's already incarcerated. The alternative to their death is incarceration, meaning they're already under control. Failing to deal with a terrorist leader could lead to them killing again, potentially. And you might enact more death in an attempt to arrest them. You could drone strike them and kill 3, or attempt to arrest them by storming a compound, killing 17, including like a SEALs officer.
But that happens via drones anyway. Like I said, 50,000 people plus have died because of the drone war since 9/11. That happens anyway.
I'm isolating a circumstance. You're talking about, when you say drone warfare have killed 50,000 plus, you're talking about the modern front of weaponry across all conflict zones across a 20-year period. I'm just talking about this specific hypothetical. If you take a look, like my content broadly, overwhelmingly, I tend to be against what we do with drone strikes. I covered extensively that bullshit under the Biden admin following our retreat from Afghanistan, where there was those fucking kids in a van or whatever who got murked by, and the dipshits from the feds were like laughing about it, and they didn't check their data before. Like, overwhelmingly, I'm going to come out against the.
But like, no wonder they won't negotiate with us then, right, Vaush?
Well, the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda officials would never negotiate with us broadly, right? I mean, they probably wouldn't. If the Taliban shaped up and turned into like real state administrators, they were like capable of international negotiations, I would probably retract all this. I would be like, yeah, we need to talk with them about this.
Well, then that's my question here. If I could just jump in really quickly with, one of the other things that I don't think has been mentioned so far is that we are also systematically starving the country of Afghanistan of a bunch of its resources right now. In your mind, is it completely impossible that if we send over some diplomats to say, hey, we can negotiate a way of you guys having control of this country again, we give you back these funds, let's that would be the way that's not, let's go in and kill with the drones, or let's go put more boots on the ground, right? I'm just wondering why that's not even considered a possibility. And I'm not trying to sound like hippy dippy, whatever, but I'm just saying that if we have something that is leverage, right, i.e. the entire fortune of the country of Afghanistan and all of its wealth that, is as a result of our holding on to it, is starving all of its people, right? We hold all of those cards. Don't you think that they would come to the negotiation table if we're like, hey, we will give this back, but you kind of have to, in the same way that you said Iran, obviously they do a bunch of fucked up things. They're a terrorist state, but you believe that, they can be negotiated with and therefore they should be. I'm wondering if you think that there could be some sort of negotiated diplomacy between Afghanistan and the United States that's like, hey, we will give you back all of this money and resources. Your people will stop starving. They will love you because you are able to be the, leader that returned Afghanistan to, some sort of stability in any kind of sense, right? Whatever that turns out to be. And in return, over the next like 15 or 20 years, you have to meet these kinds of metrics. I don't know. Again, it's not like a perfect example. I'm not a U.S. diplomat. I'm a bartender in Kansas City, but
I'm also not a U.S. diplomat.
Yeah. So but to me, right, it's like that just seems like it should at least be on the table for discussion, right? Like if we're going to be talking about extrajudicial killings, if we're going to be talking about putting troops on the ground, like it just seems absurd to me that we can't look at this obvious potential pathway to, diplomatic kind of agreement that's not going to result in, more deaths. And even so, Vaush, as a caveat to giving them their money back, I think it would make perfect sense for us to say, okay, then you guys are going to, exist under the rule of international law. And if you engage in terrorism, or if one of your citizens engages in international terrorism, then you are going to agree to let the international community collect that person and prosecute them for their crimes in front of a trial or a jury or whatever.
No, I'm fully in favor of that. As a concept, I'll always lean towards diplomacy. Even with countries like Iran and North Korea or whatever, I still think it's like the right road to take. It's difficult because the Taliban don't operate in good faith. I mean, they're like, when we say terrorist state, like we know the U.S. and Israel are terrorist states, but like the Taliban are literally
ask the Native Americans if we negotiate in good faith, though, right?
Oh wait, well, okay, hold on. We're not defending American, unilaterally or whatever, but right now, like the Taliban are uninterested in diplomacy.
I think that's because we're holding all of their shit hostage, right?
Well, but they like ideologically, there's a disposition there. Now, I think that could be addressed, possibly if there was some kind of condition like you need to establish a liaison with the United States or with the United Nations, and you need to be under like international watch. And if you do those things, then we'll unlock your finances or we'll not sanction you or whatever. Like, I think there might be a way through that. Eventually, the Taliban might like grow accustomed to governance and they might chill out a little bit. That would be ideal because there's really only two options, right? You accept the Taliban control Afghanistan or you remove them, which we already did. And, look where that got us, right? So clearly not not an operate strategy. It's unfortunate. I don't like working with people like that because, they suck. But we only have so many options here. If there was like a rebel group that we could fuck, but then even that got fucked up. We know the Mujahideen. Yeah.
How are we going to take the moral high ground though and say you're a terrorist state and we can do whatever if us doing whatever means terrorism and war crimes? Like, I don't see how that gives us any sort of a moral authority over the situation. And largely that's why I'm an anti-interventionist in general. It's because even if there are horrible things going on in X patch of dirt in X part of the country or world, yeah, guess what? We're funding and we're enabling a lot more shit that's just as bad, if not worse, around the world, via what we're funding in Israel and Palestine or with Saudi Arabia and Yemen. Like, we have no moral high ground to make these judgments and be like, since we're the world police, as you said earlier, we got to drone strike you and commit war crimes against you because you're not negotiating in good faith. Like, I just see that as kind of a sacrifice of any sort of moral authority or credibility we would be bringing to the table in the first place. And again, just because this one guy, obviously, fuck him, he deserves to die, I'm still not going to celebrate it if it legitimizes a broader strategy, which, results in more terrorism itself than the very terrorism it's supposed to fight.
I don't think we have moral authority. I just think we have regular authority. We're just the strongest hegemon in the world. We'll do what we want. I just think it's a responsibility.
Well, I'm saying we shouldn't. That's all my argument is that we obviously were the world hegemon. No one's arguing that. I'm saying that as the world hegemon, we should be a lot more responsible, and we shouldn't be committing war crimes under the guise of anti-terrorism.
No, I don't think it's a war crime to drone strike the Al Qaeda guy. But with regards to like what we can do, we're going to do whatever we think we can get away with. I think we have a responsibility to rein that in because I don't think that means what we're going to do is morally right. At the end of the day, like, whoever's the strongest in the world is going to have a lot of say over the behavior and the organization of the countries that fall under its umbrella. And I think that we have to acknowledge that. And as long as we can acknowledge that, we can make decisions within that framework. So when it comes to Afghanistan, nobody's going to leave Afghanistan untouched, right? Like, China was making like eyes at Afghanistan before we even removed our troops, with like investment agreements. Everyone wants a piece of every part of the world. So the goal is to make sure that whoever has the right in a militaristic sense, I guess, to take a piece from the world is doing so in the best possible way. As it stands right now, I think we should be pushing for diplomacy and we should be pushing for the greatest possible degree of direct civic engagement, even with states like Afghanistan controlled by the Taliban. However, as long as they are not willing to work with us under any capacity, if some fucking bombs get dropped on their territory, especially when the targets are so deserving, it seems like a relatively innocuous extension of our near unlimited hegemony. Now, that doesn't mean you can't criticize the broader process, the drone war and the fact that right now, like, you can just drone strike whoever, right? Like, I mean, we can do whatever we want. The fact that we have the ability to unleash that kind of power with so little oversight is a problem. But in specific instances where people like, the Al Qaeda guy get dropped, I won't work myself up about it too much.
Well, like I said, if a fucking, mass rapist pedophile gets the death penalty, I'm not going to shed a tear for him, but that doesn't mean I'm going to legitimize and defend the death penalty as a concept. Are you pro death penalty?
No, I'm not pro death penalty.
So would you celebrate if some like asshole piece of shit received the death penalty and died? Like, are you going to go out here and be like, yeah, that was based?
If some asshole piece of shit, damn, I kind of might. If a system exists that I disagree with, will I celebrate good outcomes from a bad system? Yeah, I have to, because I'm an anarchist. I mean, I don't even like the police, right? But I'll still celebrate if a rapist gets arrested. I would never go like, no,
Well,
I don't like
arrest,
that
technically, an
because
arrest is something that I view as within the bounds of a moral society. I'm not talking about being arrested. I'm talking about the death penalty, which is what drone strikes are, just extrajudicially implemented.
But if you're an anarchist, any arrest, any incarceration is an exemplification of the power of the judicial system, something that I'm morally opposed to. But I still celebrate if bad people get arrested, right? As long as we live in a set of unjust systems, I think it's possible to simultaneously celebrate the rare good outcomes while also condemning the broader like nature of that system. There are lots of systems that I disagree with that still occasionally.
But the problem
produce
is,
good results.
Vaush, the problem is, Vaush, you didn't just defend the killing of this 9/11 mastermind. You said at the beginning of your video, I believe drone strikes are justifiable in Afghanistan, period. You didn't say in this specific instance and every other instance is, not acceptable. You said broadly it's acceptable to carry out drone strikes in Afghanistan at this point, despite the fact that we've already agreed from their perspective, we're just as bad, if not far worse of a terrorist state than they are, having, massacred untold hundreds of thousands more of their people than they ever have here in America. So
I don't
I
think
just
considerations like that are meaningful. We're not talking about moral high grounds here, only reasonable geopolitical pretext. I think that Afghanistan is a field in which justifications can be made for drone strikes against legitimate targets because the governance of Afghanistan is completely uncooperative with us. And also basically just waged a war against the
isn't
people
that
we were
the
allied
isn't that
with.
the justification that was used to go into Afghanistan and Iraq in the first place?
I don't know, not at all. We had
That
to
they're
lie about Iraq. We had to lie like to the UN. Colin Powell had to deliver a bunch of made up bullshit about the potential for WMDs in Iraq, and then we lied about like every step of the invasion. And also, invasions are a very destructive
right. So then, why would
mechanism
you
of.
trust the U.S. government and the State Department to be calling these shots in a moral way
Do
if you
you
agree
do
that
you
they're
trust
lying?
police departments?
Absolutely not.
Well, do you celebrate if like a local rapist gets arrested?
Well, I think they should have a trial by jury, and that's all I'm advocating here for.
But that's still an extension of the power of the
Okay,
judicial
you can't say
system,
that a
no?
drone strike is the same thing as a policeman arresting someone. I
Well,
understand what you're trying to do, but
you
that's not the
compared
same thing.
9/11 to murking an Al Qaeda guy. I'm just saying we're talking about bad systems but good outcomes.
Well, here can I jump in here, guys, for a second? Because I think that one of the like elephants in the room here, and one of the reasons why I just think that a lot of the things that we are doing in Afghanistan with our drone program, Vaush, are undeniably maintaining the fact that the Taliban is not going to negotiate with us in good faith, right? They will not. Why would they? If we just assassinated, what's his fucking face?
I keep forgetting his name too.
Yeah,
Yes.
dude. What was that? Yeah, Aman al Zawahiri or
Al-Qaeda,
something like that.
yeah.
I'm fucking terrible at pronouncing people's names. Anyway, a big Al Qaeda leader, second in chain of command, right? Okay. If we keep doing that, and then we also just agreed earlier harmoniously for a moment that it was absolutely terrible what happened in January of this year in Kabul with the children that were massacred by the drone strikes. I just think that you can't both say, "Oh, I am pro diplomacy," yet I still think that it's justified for the United States to go in there and keep salting a massive wound. The only way that the Taliban will ever become an esteemed, established political figure or leaders of a nation, whatever, the only way that that's ever going to happen is if the United States actually comes to negotiate in good faith, which we never do, right? So here I am advocating that instead of saying, oh, damned if we do, damned if we don't, let's just drone away anyway, let's say, no, let's change our policy in Afghanistan. Let's go there. Let's go in there and negotiate and say, all right, here's the way that international law is dramatically staged in the West's favor. It's impossible that we will ever change it, probably 100% out of our favor, but let's offer them a bunch of their fucking money back. All of it is what we should do, right? And let's say, okay, here are the ways in which case we're willing to negotiate in good faith. We're not going to bomb your fucking country anymore. We're not going to take out any of your civilians. We're going to stop starving your children. We're going to provide people with, resources to deal with the millions of starving orphans that are in your country now because of the wrongdoing that we did. I think all of us on this stream would agree that, we've done a lot of wrong in Afghanistan. So if we need to start building amends with these people, if we ever want them to negotiate in good faith, otherwise they are just going to continue to see us as the monsters that we've deserved to be seen as on the international stage. We can't simultaneously be the good guys and the people who drone their country to bits and pieces, because every time we do, we just create more justification for them to come and, do a terrorist response, right?
So
like I always,
I agree with
I'll
that
wrap
to
this.
an extent, but it's not like they haven't broken agreements before, right? For
So
instance,
have we, though. That's what I'm
well,
saying.
wait,
We need to.
I know that. Again, this isn't like a moral high. I don't care. I don't like America. It's not like a defending America's right. We just have the power to make these decisions. So we have to trust or decide not to trust. The Taliban, for instance, agreed not to house Al Qaeda leaders in Afghanistan. So technically, the fact that that guy was in Afghanistan at all was a violation of agreements that we made with them. I have to ask, like, because if we could guarantee their good faith negotiation, I would be on board. But what would you do if the Taliban like negotiated with us,
Mhm.
got their resources back, lied, broke their agreements, which they've done before, and just continued operating as a tyrannical, oppressive, governmental force
You're
within their
asking
own
what I would do
country.
if I was like,
Well,
president?
well, basically, if they lied about it, got their resources back, and then they continue to house like terrorist leaders who make attacks both against us and our allies, like would you risk a full conflict with Afghanistan by sending in troops for an arrest, or would you drone strike the leaders, or would you just let it be because like we can't do anything without a full invasion?
Well, I don't think that you can't do anything without a full invasion. And I think that, from my own perspective point, like I don't support the United States being the world police operation. So if you're asking me what I would personally do, I would say that, we need to continue to strengthen an international coalition that's going to find states that, perform and commit terrorist acts or sponsor terrorist acts guilty. I think that that's the only reasonable solution. I don't think that there's any way to maintain any kind of order internationally, and I don't think there's any way to maintain any kind of respectability or fair ground if you're going to have one nation state playing world police. So I think if
But
you're
what do we
asking me
do?
how
Do we just let them be? Because that's like a national security issue, right? Like if the terrorist leaders are still operating, they just have a base in Afghanistan. Like, do we just let them?
But
Like, we just
again, what
get their
about the
guys from
terrorist
Afghanistan?
leaders that are here in America that from their perspective have massacred? I mean, not just from their perspective, factually have massacred and killed far more people over there than they have over here.
I know there are people here in America who deserve to hang for what they've done, but we're only talking about like what to do about this situation here, right? Look, I'm a revolutionary, at least ideologically I am. There are plenty of people here in America for whom I have strong words, okay? I don't want to get TOS'd here by YouTube or whatever, but trust me, okay? I reserve plenty of enmity for the people within our own country with our own systems. But just if you were like with the system we have now, if we were dealing with like active terrorist leaders in a country like Afghanistan. Now, if they were in Iran or something, or Saudi Arabia, you would have to negotiate. Iran and Saudi Arabia are developed, actualized countries that are capable of sitting with us at a table and talking it out. Maybe they don't always act in good faith, more Saudi Arabia than Iran historically. But you can talk with them. Afghanistan won't, like, because they're breaking their agreements in this hypothetical. So do you just let them be, or like how do you address that, I guess?
I mean, generally, like I said, I'm an anti-interventionist. But if there's actually someone who is guilty, like we talked about, I do generally think that, yeah, if we need to, go in and apprehend him, then that should be the way we do it. And, at least then we're actually facing the potential consequences of our involvement abroad rather than just sending some drone to, kill them and probably civilians as well. I just don't see how like that situation justifies us doing terrorism.
Civilians would die if we sent in people to arrest a terrorist leader being held by the Taliban. Like, we would be fighting, we would have to make our way through population centers. Taliban soldiers would be there. Innocent Taliban. I mean, a lot of these people are just 18-year-olds who, grew up in the wrong, like, Islamicist propaganda. Like, you would, like, it seems like that would inevitably lead to far more death of innocent, maybe not innocent, untried people than a drone strike would. In a consequential sense, it just seems like a really difficult bid. And I don't think there's an easy answer anywhere here. I don't like really celebrate any of this.
Right.
I celebrate the death of an Al Qaeda leader. The whole drone malarkey, I don't think there's any like clean moral side here. The nature of drones, they're terrifying. We have the ability to enact our power anywhere, with very little oversight and with very little commitment. No troops on the ground means no cameras. We can get away with a lot, and it just seems like it's a program that lacks oversight. But working within the framework that we have, the fact that drones are just the future of warfare and military engagement, I guess if I had to choose between risking another ground war with the Taliban, doing nothing, or just sending in a drone to kill the guy, I would choose the drone. And I think there are problems with that, but I think there are worse problems with the other two options.
Well, yeah, that's my whole premise of my argument, Vaush, is that I just reject that dichotomy, right? Because I agree with you 100%. I agree with you that, there are massive drawbacks to having a groundswell of individuals that, the U.S. Army just go in there and storm and take whoever terrorists down. But I also think there's massive amounts of problems with the United States drone program as it is. And that's why I think we need to all collectively advocate for a strategy that completely eradicates that drone problem, not one that just says, okay, this is a necessary evil that we have to live with. It's kind of like, in a weird sense, and I'm not trying to be too far-fetched here, but it's kind of like capitalism, right? Like capitalism is something that it seems like we just have to live with, right? But we all three here know that we don't. We can choose to live another way. We can collectively raise our voices, that we can make changes, and that we can overturn this deeply rigid capitalist militaristic system. And I think that the same perspective that we have on that, where we know it's an uphill battle, where we know we're going to have to take small victories, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, persistence, that is the way of the, social and political change in this country, right? But we have to reject the framing that just like we have to reject the framing that the only way forward is under U.S. capitalism, and how can we, ease the suffering of individuals under capitalism? Like, no, we have to imagine a way that is, completely free of suffering and abandons capitalism. I just think you have to do the same thing when it comes to drone policy and U.S. military-industrial complex. You have to envision a better world. Hold on a second, Vaush.
Oh, sorry.
I think you have to envision a better world, because if we do not, then we have to be signing our names off on the death certificates of all of these individuals, whether or not their deaths come from international terrorists, whether they come from the United States terrorist activities abroad, whether they come from drone strikes, whatever it is. We're complicit in that. And I just think that we'd all three agree that the only path forward is for us to envision a world where we do not have those kinds of problems. And, I'm open to all kinds of suggestions, but I just think we have to reject the supremacy of drone warfare and U.S. militarism.
Well, there's a lot wrapped in there. I think you can challenge a ton about our drone policy while acknowledging that in some circumstances, a drone strike on a terrorist leader might be a good thing. Because what you're talking about is a wholesale rejection, or possibly the use of drones exclusively for on-the-ground military purposes, a la Bayraktar, Ukraine, so on and so on. The drones are here to stay. They're a militarily efficient weapon. It's just how they're used, really. And right now, we have very little oversight in how we use them. I do vehemently oppose that. This is just an instance where I'm more accepting of it, because it feels like in this situation, the consequences of other sets of actions might have been worse.
Yeah.
But that's it, really. It's not a strong ideological commitment. And I do hope, ultimately, that our policy gets shaved down to a point where we're incredibly moderate with our use of these tools. Biden, for example, has been doing so many fewer drone strikes than Obama did in the later.
Right. And we give him credit for that. Yeah.
And so clearly, there are changes to be made. Trump did restrict the reporting on the civilian deaths from drones, right? Like there was he restricted the public info access on who the targets of the drones were and who was affected. I think it was something like that. I would need to reread it. There are ways to make it better and worse. But if the broader policy is a reduction in U.S. military hegemony, a reduction in the poor oversight of our systems that we use to kill, I'm fully on board with both of you. We might draw the lines at different points on very specific niche issues, and murking the one of the guys behind 9/11 is definitely a niche issue. That is not every person who's been killed by drones. I wish, not by a long shot, right? Very, very, very select. But I think on the whole, we have similar political instincts on this.
Yeah, no, I understand that, Vaush, and I definitely see where you're coming from. Like I said, I can sympathize in specific incidents, just like with the death penalty. I can understand why people would make the argument. It's just that in principle, I have to disagree with it. But yeah, I mean, again, I understand where you're coming from. The only thing I worry about is that I feel like sometimes you're using this excuse of U.S. hegemony and the fact that we are the superpower. You're almost using it to excuse or normalize the war crimes we commit as if they aren't terrorism, versus when Al-Qaeda does something or blows something up, it is terrorism, and they don't have the right to strike back, but we do, et cetera, et cetera. And it almost sometimes reminds me of the people that defend Russia in the Ukraine-Russia war. Look at all this context. They're the dominant force in their region. Look at all the stuff that happened 5 years ago, all these excuses, et cetera, et cetera. They have the right to do this. I sometimes hear echoes of that for you, just on the pro-America side. Not that I'm saying you are pro-U.S. imperialism, but I do think that sometimes you, whether intentionally or not, I do think you end up kind of regurgitating the State Department framing, the pro-America hegemony perspective when you talk about these things, versus just acknowledging where war crimes are, whoever commits them, and the fact that
any war crimes here, though. I don't think it's a war crime to take out an Al-Qaeda guy.
I understand that, but that's like 1 in 100 drone strikes. Most
But
of them
I'm
are
not
not.
defending the other. But you don't attribute
You said we have
to
a
me this whole.
justification to do drone strikes in Afghanistan, not just the specific one.
Afghanistan is an area where there might be a pretext. Like Afghanistan is a field where I think drone strikes can be permitted if the target's permitted. But that doesn't mean every target in Afghanistan is justifiable. That only means that it's a fair ground for acceptable use of drone strikes.
Right, but we're talking about the U.S. military here in the State Department, and if you give them an inch, they're going to take a fucking mile, as we've seen. If you give them one justification to do something that's illegal and a war crime, they're going to do it in 100 other instances which aren't justified at all. That's how this works, and that's the problem here. Obviously, in the specific instance.
Slippery slope argument that you can make for literally anything. Like if you give them pretext to invade Germany as part of World War II, then you've given them pretext to invade like Vietnam. If you think it's okay to arrest a person who's raped people, then you think it's okay to arrest people who have done nothing wrong. Like there are systems of power out there that are very, very, very dangerous. I'm only excusing this instance, and I think that Afghanistan's an area where we have less leeway for diplomatic negotiations.
So just to clarify, this is the only drone strike that you're okay with happening in Afghanistan?
There are a few others. There have been retaliatory drone strikes that have exclusively killed members of insurgent groups that attacked our soldiers that I'm okay with. This is just one of the rare, because like overwhelmingly,
even though those drone strikes likely killed civilians, you're still okay with that?
No, I agree with the ones that don't kill civilians. I generally agree with them after the fact.
Well, that's like saying I'm pro-war only when it's good. Like you have to be either.
No, you're completely on board with that one. I am pro-war when the war is good.
I generally think that an anti-interventionist approach is better, and that we should try to avoid war at all, no matter what, that we should always seek a diplomatic response. And if any civilians have any chance of dying, then we just create the possibility of becoming just as bad of terrorists as the terrorists we're fighting.
Like World War II? Like were we doing the Holocaust?
You know what I'm talking about.
Well, no, wait. Well, you can't shy away from the counterexample when your argument is a rejection of counterexamples. World War II was an example where, we did do a bit of trolling on Normandy, and I think it was pretty okay. I'm okay with our invention. Now, we did fucked up things during World War II. Don't get me wrong, right? Japanese internment camps being a big one domestically across the sea. We fucking bombed Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
If we were talking about like a morally consistent, morally authoritative government, then I would agree with you, Vaush. However, how many wars have happened since World War II, and how many of them were justified? 0 of them were justified that were carried out by the U.S. Absolutely 0. You have to go back to the 40s to find a war that the U.S. has participated in that was even remotely moral. We're talking about a literal terrorist government here that indiscriminately massacres civilians under the guise, as you always talk about, Russia has an excuse. Obviously, they're going to have a justification for invading Ukraine. Obviously, every superpower is always going to have a justification or excuse for whatever they're doing. Why do you not see that as being the case here?
Well, would you say that as an argument against invading Germany in World War II? Because you would be afraid of giving the racist white supremacist...
We're not talking about World War II. We're talking about the present day and the fact that every war since World War II that the U.S. has been engaged in has been immoral and unethical and unjustified and illegal.
What if this drone strike was the World War II of drone strikes? I mean, that sounds like a joke, but that is what I'm arguing. Overwhelmingly, war is a bad thing. Overwhelmingly, drone strikes are a bad thing. But there are instances, I think, where they can be justifiable.
Just like the death penalty. I agree. In certain instances, I can understand the logic behind it, but I'm not going to legitimize the system as a whole because of that.
But the death penalty entails a counter option of indefinite internment. But what if you had a dangerous criminal who was on the run, they might get away. You can't arrest them because they're in
If we had sent people to apprehend Zahari and he was running away and shooting at us, then if he got killed in the crossfire, then that's his own fault. However, that's not what happened. We sent a drone there to extrajudicially assassinate him. That's not the same thing.
I agree that they're not the same things, but I do think that's a more direct comparison. Even in the death penalty, the choice not to engage in the death penalty means that they live and that they're contained in a prison. Whereas the choice not to drone strike could potentially mean they die anyway. It could mean they get away entirely. It's a little more ambiguous because you're not making the decision after they've been incarcerated. It's a little more up in the air. We do the same thing with criminals, right? Like cops will chase criminals and, maybe a cop fires and maybe the criminal wasn't immediately a threat to the cop, but sometimes it's justifiable if the criminal has a gun and is running into a civilian area. These ambiguities are really tough to get around on a principle basis, because if you do so, is it wrong for cops to shoot people who are unarmed? Overwhelmingly, I agree, but are people who are unarmed entirely lacking in lethal threat to others? No, they're not. There could be a gun on the ground. I like to evaluate stuff based on a case by case basis, one in which I'm overwhelmingly against the hegemonic solution. But every once in a while, you have World War II, you have a Al Qaeda 9/11 terrorist guy, and you have a person who's unarmed but is like seconds away from menacing or killing a civilian.
I see the point you're trying to make, Vaush, and I think the reason that we keep going in this merry-go-round is because what it comes down to is that if you're trying to split the minutia about whether or not, one is like on paper in each instance better or less in terms of casualties in a vacuum, then you can kind of play that game for a long time, right? You can say, oh, okay, well, what if in this situation it's better to have, hit him with the drone because it would have caused more deaths. But what I think that the real problem and the crux of the disagreement that we all have here is that I think Gavin and I are both saying that even though it might behoove us in certain instances to use a drone in a specific instance instead of sending a ground strike in, that we need to radically shift the United States foreign policy in a way that it does not require us to fucking do that. What we need to and then I think we have harmonious agreement on
also, Vaush, you brought up this example of the cops shooting someone who's like running away or whatever. This policy has also led to cops abusing their authority over and over again as an excuse to murder unarmed innocent people. Like, even your
I want to change the policy.
What was that?
No, that's a perfect comparison. I want to change the policy, but there have been instances where a criminal running away did need to get shot because it's possible that they were right about to threaten a civilian. They might have had a weapon on them that a cop saw earlier. So the policy I disagree with, just like both of you. I disagree with our drone policy. I disagree with our attitude towards war. But even in policies that I disagree with, there are always going to be individual instances of things that I think in the specific context of the situation worked out okay.
Yeah,
and
well,
I believe that about lots of bad systems.
Sure,
I have to. I'm an anarchist.
I understand that, Vaush. And again, the only thing I disagree with is just that in principle, I have to come out against the system as a whole, a system which leads to the deaths of estimates, say 9 out of 10 targets, being civilian. Obviously, we know that thanks to the whistleblower Daniel Hale, who's currently in prison for telling the truth about our drone program. Again, if we were a moral government, if we were a government that was consistent when it came to picking and choosing our battles, then I might agree, like theoretically, but that's not the case. We're dealing with a government that, as I said, has since World War II only engaged in unethical and immoral and illegal wars. I mean, you were talking about mines yesterday, and how horrific they are. There's another example of the terrorism we've wrought all over the world. I don't think that justifies other countries drone striking our leaders. So just as a principle,
inshallah. Every once in a while there's a World War II. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
and I would never, and if people back in like 1939 were like, we can't invade Germany. America is a white supremacist nation that has historically used its power to colonize the Philippines and do horrible things in Latin America and Panama and so on and so on.
Sure.
And I would say,
yeah,
I agree.
World War II was bad, Vaush. I think everyone agrees that the Hitler and the Nazis were bad. I know
you think that. I'm just saying, I would be like, listen, Teddy Roosevelt fucked up Latin America. We fucked up Panama. We've done horrible shit. But just this time, yeah, I think we've got a good one.
Yeah, and
I think we finally found it.
And that's been the justification for every single U.S. intervention and invasion since World War II, and it's resulted in hundreds and hundreds of thousands, millions of people dead all around the world as a direct result of the enrichment of the weapons manufacturers and defense contractors. Of course, there's going to be a justification for
you would have invaded Germany.
Again, we can go back to World War II.
But there we go. That's it. Yes, people will lie. They will misrepresent information. They will try to sell you on every war, every drone strike. But just because they lie all the time, just because our government lies all the time, which it does, doesn't mean that every once in a while there isn't just through sheer.
Okay, well, I think that's outcomes, a good. I think instead of
a good outcome,
instead of running in circles, Vaush, I think that we can agree to disagree and agree that every well, no, that's what I'm saying, and we can agree that every once in a while, even within a very unjust and unethical system, yes, every once in a while there is an example you can point to, as the United States government and the State Department loves to, that yes, every once in a while something is justified.
Even a drone strike, as they are.
Right, and I'm not denying that. I'm not in the interest of denying reality. I'm just saying that that's what a principle is. Even if every once in a while you can find an exemption or something that goes against the principle, you still generally uphold the principle. Again, same with the death penalty, as I keep going back to. But again, we don't have to keep running in circles and talking about fucking the Nazis. I don't really see how that's
I
productive.
love talking about the
I
Nazis.
know,
But no,
Vaush.
I fully agree with what you're saying. And if I had the chance to, if I could snap my fingers, do away with our entire policy with regards to drone intervention, including in Afghanistan. This is only as long as we have the bad system, 1 in every 1,000 outcomes will be acceptable to me. Same way I feel about a lot of bad systems. I don't like capitalism, but they make good video games now and again. Whatever. You roll the dice, you get what you get. But if I could take it all away, the 1 in 1,000 good and the 999 out of 1,000 bad, I would. And I think you both would too. And I mean,
well,
we agree on that.
I think that that's a good place to wrap this discussion. I thought this was a lot more fruitful than and good faith in discussing. Obviously, we were I won't lie, Vaush. I was a little terrified coming into the Vaush's den. I thought this was
to talk to you in the future too. I love talking to you
that's
guys.
what I'm saying. I think that we've established a good rapport here, and I would be more than interested in chatting again over either areas of agreement or disagreement, because I like having nuanced discussions like this where nobody like fucking blows their gasket. So thank you for having us on, and thank you for chatting with us.
Yeah, no, the pleasure's mine. I don't like shouty arguments for the most part. They're not that fun. I like talking to folks. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thanks, Vaush. We appreciate the conversation. It was really fascinating. Have a good rest of your day, man.
Be well.
Peace out.
Peace out, bro. Wow, what a day. We just fucking went round and round with Vaush, and I think we held our own, Gavin. I thought we both did pretty good. I thought we made our points clearly. It'll be up to the audience to decide. But you know what? Shake hands, good discussion, good debate. Thanks for Vaush for, engaging with us.
Yeah, that was an interesting discussion, needless to say. Really appreciate everyone for tuning in, for chatting along. Really appreciate seeing you guys support us in the chat. Means a lot to hear the nice words. But yeah, I really did think it was a good discussion, a really substantive and interesting discussion. Although obviously I still think we're 115 million% more in the right. Again, I still appreciate Vaush for engaging with us and having that chat. I thought it was really, really worthwhile.
Yeah, the chat seems to think that Gavin was the decided victor, so pat yourself on the back, bro. You got fucking angry there. I was like, oh, Gavin's gonna blow. I was like, all right, I got it. Gavin has it. Yeah, but
well, thank you so much, guys. And yeah, you did a great job too, Zach. It was not just me carrying that one. I thought you had a lot of really, really great stuff to add to the discussion. And thank you so much, everyone, for the super chats. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Dan Campbell. Always love seeing you in the chat. Much better discussion than expected. Agreed. It was a much better discussion than I expected. Really, really enjoyed that. And again, thank you guys so much for the super chats and the support today, watching this video, hitting the like button, and obviously subscribing to the channel. If you're new, welcome. We really appreciate you tuning in today. Hope you guys enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. But yeah, thank you also, Eddie, for the $9.99. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Hysteric Raider, as always, for the super chats. Thank you so much, Veronica, for the $9.99. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Max Roy. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. DJ D14D, really appreciate it. Everyone that contributed today, we really genuinely thank you. It means a lot. And again, thanks everyone for hitting that like button too. That's really important to boost this in the discussion. Thank you so much, Isaac. Really appreciate it. Thank you for the $4.99. And Ryan, thank you so much. But yeah, for I guess second, third, if you count Glenn Greenwald, third debate ever, I thought we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I thought we crushed it. I think we both made our points that we wanted to. It was nice, kind, respectful. We'll have Vaush on again, probably to debate or go on his simultaneously, kind of like we did today. So good. Looking forward to that. Good to have good chats, good discussion. And yeah, I thought we held our own against somebody that's way more experienced debating us. But I think Gavin and I were just 100% right on the subject matter. So it was,
yeah. And sorry, John, we did announce an hour before, but this all came together right at the last minute. It wasn't like really pre-planned in advance. It was all like we were figuring out the scheduling right up until this morning. So sorry we didn't have more of an announcement. But if anyone's just tuning in now and they're like, what the fuck? We're about to end the live stream, so you can go back and watch the entirety of it. I might re-upload it as its own video too, just because I'm pretty proud of how we handled ourselves. But before we get out of here, I did want to say a massive thank you to the patron community of the Vanguard. Thank you so much to everyone that supports us on patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. We really appreciate the support. It means everything to us, and it makes this show possible. We would not be able to do the Vanguard without you guys. So thank you so much for the support. We really appreciate it. And Zach and I are actually about to be taking to the streets in just a week or two now to produce our first ever van documentary. So if you guys are excited about seeing some more on the ground style documentary content from us, then consider hitting up the Patreon. It's a really good way to help fuel those road trips and those documentaries and the on the ground, kind of content we want to bring you guys to supplement the commentary that we already do. So again, thank you so much to everyone that tuned in, and a specific huge shout out to everyone that contributed via super chat, to all the patrons of the Vanguard. You guys are so awesome. You keep us going, you keep us afloat, and we wouldn't be doing the show without you. So thank you so much. Thanks to everyone that's given us some kind words in the chat. We really, really appreciate it. It means so much. And obviously, thank you guys all for just being a part of this community, for being subscribed, and for tuning in.
Yeah, great fucking show today, guys. Thank you to everybody for the positive reinforcement. This was a debate that was a long time coming. We're happy that we cleaned up well. As I saw in the super chat, Gavin, are you sure that drone strike you just dropped on Vaush's argument was justified? LOL. Yeah, that was funny. I thought we did a great job. We're going to do more debates in the future. This is a good time. So yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully talking to a good friend of the show, Brent Welder, about the Kansas abortion ruling. Still getting that ironed out a little bit, but yeah, should be good stuff. And thank you guys, everybody, for tuning in. We're grateful, all that shit. So hit the like and subscribe button, notification bell. Sometimes we debate Vaush really impromptu with only an hour's notice.
Yeah, and thank you so much, AV, for the $4. Really appreciate that. We're gonna get out of here, probably go smoke a fat bowl. Really appreciate all you guys tuning in. Thanks so much. We'll see you tomorrow.
Peace.